Well, hello. Welcome back to the Kingsway podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Golly, we're back. We're back at it, Jed. Are you ready?
I'm always ready.
I knew you were. I told Jed to be ready, on his tippy toes, ready, reactive, responsive, quick. And I think you yawned and said you were tired.
I'm feeling all of those things.
Okay,
today,
cool.
yeah.
You're ready.
Yeah.
I was just... I have 1,000 thoughts going through my mind. I've wanted to do about 3 different things today, and so I'm going to attempt to do them all, which is sometimes just a terrible, terrible plan. But at the same time, I think it's totally worth it. First things first, did the hashtag Thank You Ravi last week. Hope some of you, if you haven't checked that out, to go and do that. At the time we're filming this, he actually died today, and so super sad. I don't know even how to feel it. You know, it's like one of those things that I'm super proud of the way he lived his life. Obviously pursuing Christ first and worthy of an example to follow, but also just, I feel like just to the bitter end, it's just an incredible life lived. So some of that, but what's neat, Jed, is while this is going on and, you know, this is kind of ending, I'm also getting to read his last book. And so I'm literally like 30 minutes away from finishing. I was trying to finish it before we did this. I didn't quite get there. But just so cool. And what was incredibly helpful for me is the day he dies, I'm still hearing his words and I'm still learning from him. And it was comforting. It was kind of like one of those, like, God's not done using him yet. And I know he's going to continue to kind of be in my life and speaking to me. So with that being said, I want to jump into a few thoughts. The first being this, like, so what are we like? Is this week 12? Is this week 85 of the Coronas? What is this, week 8, 9? I can't remember.
I don't know what day
I think
it
we're
is,
like
man.
day like 78 or something, like of quarantine / I Am Legend beginnings or whatever it is. I preached this last week and I said, I don't know if I've ever been in a more divisive time. Like, I really feel like you could like throw a rock and hit somebody and you're not going to have the same opinion if you throw 100 rocks and you hit 100 different people. Like, everybody's just got like their own, mentality. And even people that are on the conservative side, I feel like are that way. They kind of have their own opinions on where, and I think the liberal or the Democratic side is that way. And then I know that libertarians and even some of the people out there that don't have huge political connections, they got their own thought of what it looks like. So, on the thought process of being a little controversial, I am going to talk about that today, which I am a little excited about, but also terrified because I know it is divisive. And so I know that some of you are going to leave maybe possibly a comment and be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to try to be as neutral as possible. But at the same time, I do think it's worth talking about because, I mean, that's what else are we talking about right now?
Just remember, I hate conflict, so I might get up and walk out.
Okay, you hate conflict. They can't see you walk out.
That's true.
I'll just
keep
do like
talking
a Jed voice, like yeah,
that's exactly what I sound like. That was incredible.
Perfect. Well, to start out, keep it light. I don't want to try to be too crazy here, but one of the things Andy Stanley said this last week in his sermon, which I really liked, and if Better For It is the series they just started at North Point, worthy, I think, of listening to someone like that. Definitely a mentor in my life. And one of the things he said is, as long as pain has a gain, I don't mind going through it. And he just talked about how, building muscles or learning a new, skill or activity or healing after an injury, as long as you know that things are getting better, pain it's not always a bad thing, if that makes sense. But he said pain without gain is suffering. That's just suffering. There's nothing in that. It's just wasted opportunity. And so on the heels of that, that's kind of what I want to talk about today. I mean, that's literally like, that was my thought process. It's just going like, what are we learning? Like, what are we learning from this? Like what in this moment where like it is like a pause, and whether the level of pain you're in is kind of, it's like whether you're the family that's like stubbed their toe, but it really hasn't made that big of a difference, or you're the family that's like completely isolated. It's made like a major financial, relational, separation, you feel alone, anxiety, whatever. I know there's a wide range. What are we learning in this? Because I think for all of us, we know that the normal we're coming back to is not going to be the same. Like, regardless, I know we keep talking about when we get back to normal, but I don't think I think it's just going to be a new normal. I really do. And having had 3 kids in the last 8 years, I know that new normals are very possible, and they're not always bad. You know, they're just different. They're just different. And I think for us as a community here in Mount Vernon, but also individual families, and obviously nationally. But so like, what are we learning? So that's kind of my first thought is like, I want to know as we're talking through this today, like where's our gains at? Like, what are we gaining? Like, what are we working on? Like, have we learned lessons, in some things that, man, we just weren't aware of how much we needed something in our lives or what? And I'm going to point out a few things. Like, as Kingsway, we have a 5-year plan here to take 4 categories and advance them in health. Like, that's kind of what we said. Like, we're just going to try to get healthy in these 4 things. And it's been a goal for us. So it's like, it's finances, relationships, discipleship, and then parenting. And so I just wanted to walk through my kind of gains from those. And then also kind of, ask the YouTube world, what they're learning and what they're gaining from. Maybe if they saw some blind spots, or maybe, this is the other thing. Maybe you found some health that like you didn't know you had. You had some strength that this pain kind of tested, but you found, man, I had a community around me, or my finances were in a good place, that the anxiety that some people were feeling, it didn't really get to where I was at. Or, I found that the team I was working with, or the place I was working was strong. And we did all right. So let me just walk through these real quick. And Jed, obviously, I'd really like your thoughts if you have some of those. The 4 qualities are like relationships, discipleship, parenting, and obviously, I think there's the financial side. I think is everybody. I think regardless of where you're at, whether you're living at home or not, I think there's some strain, kind of in the whatever. So let's just start with an easy one. All right, let's just start with relationships. Okay, because I think this is the one that all of us very quickly realize, like, FaceTime is not the same as being face to face. Like that is that like fair? Do you feel that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't do a lot of like video chatting in anytime.
Anytime. Yeah.
Or even like, I mean, I text a lot probably, but I mean, I think at this, you're very aware of how shallow that texting keeps things. Like, I don't want to get into a deep conversation or even really talk fully about life over a text message or even over a FaceTime.
This was someone pointed out. It feels like more work over FaceTime. And what they said, and I hadn't thought of it like this, was you can't read the body language or like the tone as well. And so you're like, look, it's almost like text messaging for face to face.
Yeah.
You're like trying to read into it, and you're like trying to figure it out, and you're trying to like read the room, and you're trying not to cut the other person off, and you're trying to like listen, but it feels delayed and harder. And like, I found myself getting lazier and lazier about it. Like, I just don't want to do it because it's not fulfilling what I want it to, and it feels like too much work to try. Do you find yourself feeling that similar way? I mean, maybe I'm not the same way. If you're that way, please comment. Let me know. I feel like that's where I'm more desperate for it sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I value it, but then like we do it, and I'm like, gosh, it's not really what I was hoping it would be.
Yeah.
But I'm still grateful for it. I mean, it does provide a closeness. It does provide a connection in some way that obviously is better than text messaging. I just don't think it's a substitute for like there's no way to substitute. I'm curious though if the younger, even 10 years younger than me or 20 years younger than me, teenagers are thinking the same thoughts that we are though.
Yeah.
Like I'm really like curious of whether or not they've got the skills that we just don't have, kind of like the 2 generations above us trying to use the internet.
Yeah.
If they have a skill set that we don't have.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I am, I think, right about like 10 years younger than you. And so then I'm even in that middle ground of where like, I think I would relate more with you on that side of things than on the other side where it's nearly impossible to cultivate like a real and genuine relationship over just FaceTime and text.
Absolutely.
Like not knocking like online not like online friendships or anything, like playing video games together or anything. That's great. That's awesome.
No, but
it's not the same.
But it always leads to more. I mean, it's very similar. Like if you started a dating relationship over FaceTime, eventually you're not like, this is enough. Like, you're like, I want to be together. Like, right. Like, you're like, I want to be next to you. Like, I want to be in the same room as you. I feel the same way with friendships. I feel like it's the same way with anything, like you're eventually like, want to be around I am curious though. I would love, maybe Jesse would be someone that we could ask him
Maybe, yeah.
his thoughts and stuff. And maybe we can come back with that. And I mean, I just might dig into his brain and just ask him where he's at. But I have a feeling though, but they may not be as sensitive to the understanding that it's not fulfilling it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So they may think it's doing more than it really is. Cause I don't think it's I think it's a non-negotiable that we need people in our lives, relationally. What I have found though, is that what used to be kind of a in passing thing relationally, like where you just kind of reach out and you kind of do this like in passing thought, now can be more significant if you actually do reach out.
Absolutely,
And, a handshake used to be just kind of a common greeting, but now if there's enough trust and you do it responsibly, man, it can mean a lot right now.
Yeah.
And I've found like eye contact, where it used to be something that you're like, that's just a sign of respect. Now it's almost like a sign of like, relational intimacy. You're like, hey, I see you. I like see you, like really see you.
Yeah.
And just little like even text messages and things where you haven't seen people that normally you would just kind of intersect with in life, and to think of them outside of those contexts and then reach out, it does make a big difference. And I found that like I didn't realize how much that really does matter sometimes. When the life gets crazy and things are going on, you kind of get pulled into your own routines and kind of who you see, and you kind of forget about maybe there's some things you need to be doing. I know, you're a single guy, but I'm married. I know that marriage in this time has been, it's been an intense thing to kind of, it's awesome in some ways, more time together. But my wife's name is Katrina, and Katrina and I were talking the other day, and, we haven't been able to go out to meals. We haven't gone on dates. We're not spending time with other couples. Like, we're with our kids all the time. And like, if you've had kids and you've been married, there's just the intensity of being like trapped in the same space for a long period of time, where small issues can become big issues, or small events and things that you get to make as a memory can become very like precious to you, and that you wouldn't have had the time to do. And so I know it's been interesting to kind of dive back in and have this intense time. It's been, I think, both eye-opening, healthy, and at times difficult, to take steps forward. It's been interesting. It's been interesting. Any other thoughts, like relationally, like, you're thinking through like what this is kind of like, what are our gains? What are we looking at? Yeah. Like I said, more off the cuff than I normally would be, but I wanted to kind of just have a conversation. That's kind of my mindset. Marriage wise, I think I'm just seeing the intentionality that I need to have. When I thought it was just time, now I have the time, but the time doesn't make a difference if I'm not intentional with the time. So I'm with my wife and with my kids, but it doesn't change anything if I'm not being intentional with that extra time, or intentional with that intimacy that I have. So, trying to figure out ways to be more intentional with my relationships. I knew it was important. I always thought it was time that was keeping me, especially in my marriage, from doing it. Nah, it's my own selfishness and laziness, my own inefficiencies, right? Taking a step. Let's jump to one a little harder. Maybe if we can come back if we have a thought. But how about let's just do finances. I just think finances is probably the easiest one for us to get to, and not because I think like finances is easy to talk about. I just think like immediately if we've watched any Mad Max movies or any like dystopian movie of any kind, like you're like, all right, so the one that has the most guns and the strongest basement, like they're the ones that are rich, and like
gasoline and water.
Exactly, man. Like
desert wasteland.
I'm like immediately, I'm like, all right, so the people with cows and guns have food, and
the one with the giant truck with the guitar amps and the fire guitar.
Oh, dude, every dystopian movie ever, Blade Runner. I mean, just got all this stuff in my mind where I'm just like, oh.
We get the Hunger Games, and
I hate that my mind. And I'm not normally an anxious person. I'm not normally a person that like runs to the worst case scenario of something. I'm more of a realist. I'm not a pessimist in the sense of scenarios. But even myself, like after like week 3, like you start feeling that tension of going like, how far down the rabbit hole are we going to go? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not a stocks guy yet. I don't have a ton of investments in things, but you're watching some of that stuff, you're hearing it, and you're going like, okay, this could get bad. And you start looking at your savings account, you start asking about this, like how essential, that's the word, right? How essential is my job? Like where are we going to go?
Yeah.
And I think every family kind of was that way, and some people are going to say, they're the optimists that they were like, I never doubted. And, whatever. I get that. But I think we all have, as like C.S. Lewis has said, we all have this doubt that creeps us up at night, that kind of creeps in and kind of just stalks our confidence and stalks our faith. And so rather than just living in that doubt and just being like, yeah, we're going to just safeguard all the water and gasoline and bullets. What are we learning from this? I think I know myself. I very quickly like took inventory of what was most important, like material wise, and like what would be essential in the sense of like what we would need to still function as a happy family or as a functional family. And that list was a lot smaller than I think I had evaluated before. It really was. And it was a little bit like, man, how many things have I piled up around what I would call essential that probably aren't in my financial situation? And then how irresponsible have I been in preparing for something like this? And maybe you're like me, Jed. I wasn't just thinking about myself. I was thinking about how the people I might need to help and how I wouldn't be in a position to even help them because of some of the things that I didn't have anything to give.
Mm-hmm.
And we would all be in that same spot. I'm like, well, we need to help each other. We all can't help each other because none of us can help each other. What were you thinking? I mean, you're a guy, you don't have, where are you at? What are you thinking in this stuff?
It is odd because most of the people that I even interact with or hear talking about it or talk with about it, are probably more closer to your situation.
Yeah.
You have, a wife, kids, or, your own like immediate family to take care of. And for me, I have, a lot of brothers and sisters and my parents and whatnot, but I'm not married. I don't have any kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, any thoughts, if I let myself go down the rabbit trail of worst case scenarios and I'm like, what do I bring? Like I definitely, yeah, there's still like other people for me
Yeah.
are way more important. Like anything I have, no, is gonna go to helping my brother and his wife and kid,
and their
my
kids.
sisters and their kids, and I don't know that
Did
I
you guys
have
ever joke? Did you guys ever joke of like, we're all just gonna move into one house together and we'll figure it out? Yeah. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that,
our family had that same, and we're like in 3 separate states. We're like, we just get to one place and we just hold up.
Yeah. I mean, for years, my family's big enough that my brother, I think, like half jokingly, maybe a quarter jokingly and 3/4 serious, has been like, we're just gonna build the Moody compound. And now it's just like that might legitimately happen.
Underground Moody compound location, never. Like you're not getting it out of them. I totally, and you know what? And it's silly to say that, but I totally get it. Yeah. I mean, I totally get that. And that's like more of like a homestead, type thing. That wasn't that long ago that people would come here, set up a house, then somebody get married, they just go so far down away and build another house, and then there's the son lives with their or the daughter, and so. I mean, it was just it felt like we were like, are we going to go back in time? Are we, what's happening? So for sure, I think the lessons I'm learning from this is, I need to take advantage of the opportunities I have to be generous. I need to take advantage of the opportunities to not worry just about my own security. If I hoard, I miss the opportunities to be a blessing. And we say that we're blessed to bless, and it's really easy to compare and to see how much or little you have. Yeah. And I think this is a time, I think, to test your own heart to be generous. I think it's a faithful thing. And I don't mean that in a non-responsible way. Like, obviously you want to take care of your family and be responsible for the things that you've got to pay for. But
Yeah.
the extra or the things that you have, man, this is just a chance to prove faith where there might be fear that would reign in your finances. You choose faith and you say, no, this would help. And we got to choose to get. And so, that's been my battle in my own heart, buy a meal here, give a gift if I can, provide a way to say, no, money is not where I will choose to provide my own security and my own, safe place. You want to be responsible, but in the end, stock markets fail, dollars lose their value, and you got to be able to say that there's somebody up there that's taking care of you more than your bank account. And I think in those moments, I think that's the test, right? That's like the pressure as you're like, golly, I thought my paycheck or my budget was the thing providing me with security. And it's definitely a peace thing. It's definitely a responsible thing. But in the end, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not the thing. What do you feel that same thing? You feel like those are the things you're learning, or?
I think so. I think, I don't know. I would say just like a responsibility with it. Like, even because, like I said, like for so long, all my money's gone to college. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And it has been kind of like, I have my places that I give and that, charities that I give to and whatnot. A compassion child I take care of. And,
Yeah.
and so, I don't have those things, but for the most part, up till now, like even my thought of the money is it's mine and what am I going to do with it? And I think that has just been kind of like a subtle shift of just like, I mean, yeah, it's still mine. I earned it, but how I'm gonna use it,
Yeah.
I guess change. It's not like how am I gonna use it? What guitar am I saving up for? How am I gonna buy? But
Dude, I love to hear that too. It's that subtle shift too of realizing like if this could all go away.
Yeah.
And like, what if? And those are the things that I think stalk each of us. But man, we're gonna walk away with this. I hope we're reevaluating our budgets. I hope we're reevaluating our response. Hope we're reevaluating how we viewed it. I mean, it's like if a stock market can steal your happiness and keep it away and steal your security, or if a lesser number, of course, obviously, there's, there's an old quote that says, if people that say money can't buy happiness haven't had enough money yet. Like, it's true, but I don't think money can't buy happiness. I think money can't buy lasting joy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like happiness is conditional. Joy is joy doesn't have a condition that causes it. It's not environmental. So, in my mind, there is a part of this that I think has kind of helped me see the trap that I could get into if I'm not careful. Both being overly responsible and trying to be in control.
Yeah.
Both being under responsible and not having an opportunity to be generous and do those things. So, gosh, it's tough. Let's do the third one. I'll do this real quick. Parenting. I know that you are an uncle, and so you have an opportunity, and both a brother and sister too. Yeah. So you have chances to nurture. But I will just tell you, when you are a parent, it is a little bit different. I have 3 boys, and we've had to homeschool now since spring break. And, it's been, I don't even know. I mean, it's definitely the most stressful thing my wife, I think, has gone through in the last, and she was here, she would tell you that. And me as a supporter, she's definitely been the primary. I've done almost nothing when it comes to homeschooling. She's done almost all of it. And it's put a lot of pressure. It's put a lot of pressure on us to kind of wear another hat. It's like you're trying to be teacher and all this. And it really it makes you realize how important other people, other adults are in raising kids. Like in helping your kids grow and helping them take steps. I can just tell you, I would not want to be the only voice into my kid's life. They will have enough blind spots. They will have too shallow a perspective. They need other adults in their life. They just do. I think youth groups and children's ministries and churches provide one avenue. That's been sad that they haven't had that as well. And I think that the school system and solid teachers, and I believe Mount Vernon has an incredible group of teachers that do a great job. And I've been really sad that they haven't had a chance, and they've been sad that they haven't had a chance to be around their peers and those teachers. So I know personally, I'm more grateful, have more gratitude, and I definitely will be more expressive, I think, in the future to just say thank you for the job they do. And I know all teachers are going, amen, hallelujah. This has always been that way. And I go, I know. That's why the pain of this is getting some gain, right? Which is going to get some traction to that. On a whole nother level, though, I have loved the intensity, that the time, and like, kind of this compacted schedule of just like always around my kids when I'm not at work has been really good for me. I think there was times that I kind of ran away from it, got scared of it, didn't like it. It felt kind of like a blanket of like, oh man, responsibility and things. And I've just found myself going like, it's blessing. And I would, I don't want my kids to get sick. I don't want anything to happen, and having influence in their life and be able to take advantage of these memories. I know they'll remember them for a long time. They'll remember it as kind of the longest summer of ever. I will probably remember it as the longest summer ever for different reasons, But I'm excited to see what the stories will come down the lane and the impact that just a few months might have, and I see it as a gift. I'm pretty excited. Trying to learn some stuff. Take advantage of every chance you get to ask good questions to other parents. Ask good questions for other adults. That have questions. I've always been amazed. Like, you're coming up against something and you'll ask another parent and they're like, oh yeah, I remember that. And like, it's like nothing new under the sun. Like, they've dealt with this before, and all you have to do is just ask. And there's people willing to try to give you help. So it's been good. Last one is probably the one that obviously as a pastor I'm most concerned about, and one that you're studying at OCC a ton, is discipleship. And that word alone, I'm like, yeah, disciple. Like, like it's a small word. There's
barely even matters.
And so I want to kind of give you some thoughts. Ravi Zacharias breaks down the 3 temptations of Jesus in Matthew, and Matthew chapter 4, and he just talks about like this basically expression of like, he sees this beautiful arc of how discipleship really is Jesus fulfilling what Adam couldn't, and then teaching others to not follow in Adam's footsteps, but to follow in Jesus. And so it's like the fruit, right? And what he follows through with in the garden versus how Jesus comes against the same temptations, or the accuser in the wilderness. And so, the will of the stomach, the will of the heart, and then the will of basically full surrender to God. God is God. And so he sees this arc of like, Jesus is offered bread, like the fruit, like, hey, you could eat this, right? It's going to make you full. And then the second one is like, hey, you could jump off this and command God, to catch you, and he would. So it's bending God to your will, which is ultimately a grasp for power, right? And then the last one is, if you bow down to me, I will give you the same as God. And so you'll know the answers, type thing. So the concept that he breaks down in that last one is really, really cool. So that the last one, he basically, the accuser says, hey, if you bow down to me, I'll give you all the nations of the world. And Jesus replies, and he says this, verse 7 of chapter 4 of Matthew, do not put the Lord your God to the test. And when you think, well, what does that mean? Like, it's basically saying this, like, do not demand to know all that God knows, so that you can test whether or not he's doing the right thing. It's the concept of surrendering and realizing you are not God. He is God. And without doing that, if you demand all the answers before you get to God, there is no need for faith. And so what Jesus does is proves that all Adam had to do was say no, believe in the will of God, and then put faith in him. Put his faith in him. And so that's what Jesus does. Now, why I think that's so poignant to this idea of discipleship right now is because we all have needs that sometimes aren't being completely met right now. We've just talked about them, and we go through those. We all have ways that we would like to control the plan moving forward and play God, right? Like, oh, I would love to be able to just make this my own. And then we all have questions that we don't have answers to right now. And I think it's just cool how this is just a part, I think, of the temptation from the very beginning. in a certain situation to demand our needs be met, demand that we get a say in how it plays out, and then demand to know, everything that's going on down to the detail. And I think what Ravi was pointing out in the book, which he wrote before this was even going on, is basically like, if you do that, you remove the need for faith. And you remove the need for God to be God. And so he does this brilliant job of saying, like, all right, so let me just show you why this is played out. So he uses Peter as the example. And Peter, of course, is the most common. He's the most common of common guys. Like, he's not Paul, who's been trained up. He's not Apollos. Like, he's not some incredible orator or a lawyer or recorder like Luke, like that has skills that are obviously being used. Peter's just a fisherman. He has no training. He had nothing. Like, he's a common dude, but yet he writes these letters, these epistles, and he records some of the stuff. And one of the things he records is in chapter 3, verse 15. It's a very poignant verse. It's actually the verse that Ravi used as kind of his launching pad for his whole ministry. And I just find it curious. This is what it says in verse 15. But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience so that those that speak maliciously against you, your good behavior in Christ, may be ashamed of their slander. So it's verse 15 and 16. That is my approach right now to discipleship. In these times, I'm not trying to see that everyone's needs are exactly met, though I am in sometimes wanting and will step out to meet needs for sure. But I don't think that's the biggest issue yet. I don't think that we just need to try to control all the plans and come up with the perfect plan, though I do think planning is important. I do. I think we have a responsibility to it. And I also know that I really need to work on saying I don't know. I don't know. And I think we need to get better as a church and as followers, as disciples, to say that I don't know, but God's got this. And not in an irresponsible, negligent, lazy way, but like in a truthful way. And what that allows us to do then is what these verses say. When we do have hope, we place it in our faith, not in needs being met, not in plans, and not in the ways that we get answers so we feel like God, but truly put our faith in play. And what that does is that grows us to a place that no matter what comes, if our needs aren't met, if we don't have the perfect plan, and if we don't have the end, our faith is secure and it's real. And when we lead people to that hope, it changes everything. It changes everything about the way that we pursue Christ. And when we do it with gentleness and kindness, and our lives reflect it, people won't get it. They won't. And they may be malicious. I love that word in the English language. It's a beautiful word. It's like, malice, anger without reason is what that's really defined as. Just anger beyond reason. And it's totally seen right now with both sides of this, Democrat, Republican, whatever. It's like just this malicious attack, and it's all about needs not being met and the wrong plan and no answers. Right? And I'm like, yeah, we need faith. That's what we need. We need to be people of faith. And so as we're trying to be healthy in our discipleship, I think that's what we need to teach each other, is when our needs aren't being met and we're worried, when things aren't working out as planned, and when we don't have the answers, that we put our words, our hearts, and our actions into play with our faith. And we do that because we believe that that's what God has called us to do with gentleness and kindness. So Peter, the ordinary man, got that right. And I think us, the ordinary man in Missouri or wherever, can get that right again. So Ravi's still speaking after the grave. Good discussion today. Be healthy in your relationships, in your parenting. Don't let in your finances, in your discipleship, don't let the pain go to waste. Don't just suffer. Make some gains. Ask the right questions. Put in the comments what you're learning, what you're growing in. Put in the comments that you're not wasting your pain, Just say that. I'm not wasting my pain. I'm making some gains. That's all you may need to put. You don't need to put specifics. Love to see it. Thanks so much for tuning in, Jed. Appreciate you.
Anytime.
Hey, you guys have a great and glorious day in the Lord. We'll see you next week.